Hey everybody, welcome back to your Donna Drones podcast. I'm Dawn Zoldai, your host and the CEO of P3 Tech Consulting. We just had an amazing video about Valmiz, Augmentive AI, and today we have with us here to talk about this, Rommel Martínez. He is the CTO of the ASTN Group, who is the creator of this incredible multi-agent artificial intelligence product. And we're going to dive deep into this. So whether you're here in the States or you're overseas, grab a coffee. We are going to dig deep into AI with Rom today. By the way, we are live. So we know you're out there. Jump in the chat, ask your questions because you may very well have some. And I also want to acknowledge Kongsberg Geospatial, who has sponsored this month dedicated to the theme of crossover technologies, meaning dual use, on the commercial and military side, which is exactly why Rom is here today, because Valmiz bridges both worlds, and we're going to talk about that now. So welcome to the show, Rom.
Thanks, Don. It's nice to be back.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Rom says back because we did a product release video, gosh, it seems like forever ago, at the same time yesterday. We'll drop that link. All about Valmiz AI. I think it was earlier in the summer. But Rom is here with us now to talk about everything that's happened since then. And first thing I want to do though, Rom, for those that don't know you, let's tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
Oh, I'm an AI researcher with over 24 years of experience, including software engineering, systems administration, and programming language theory and design. So I currently live in the Philippines, warm country.
Yeah, so that's what I was going to say. Ram is coming to us live from the Philippines, and we're so thankful to have you here. This is a global podcast. We've got fans from all over the world, and this AI I think, is going to take over the world once people hear about it. So tell us a little bit about ASTN Group, Ram. You're the Chief Technology Officer for this company. Tell us a little bit about like the origin story and what you guys, what your mission is there.
Yeah, so initially we were trying to work on airline procurement. So parts, making sure that the parts go to destination tracking, monitoring, and all of those things. So it's a really complex system. Then the CTO of the company, Robert Pineda, uh, asked me, can we extract the key ideas from this and generalize it and then turn it to a multi-purpose system? And then in 5 minutes, I came back to him and said, yes. And then the next thing we know, we already took a deep dive and several modules, several systems have already been written. And then here's Valmiz to answer that. So in addition to answering those questions, we ended up answering more questions and providing solutions to more markets than we initially expected.
Yeah, I know because when I first met you guys, I obviously went on your website, ASTN Group. I looked at, I Googled Valmiz, and I think you guys have pegged over 52 different market sectors that this product can fit into. We're going to get into that. But before we do, I want to back up for a second because, Okay, somehow my microphone got muted even though I have touched absolutely nothing. So I apologize for that, Rom. But let's back it up for a second. Everybody talks about AI, but how do you define AI?
Ah, uh, that's both an easy and difficult question to answer. So just looking at the letters, artificial intelligence. So it has been coined, I believe, in the early 1950s. Um, so artificial intelligence. So the ultimate goal is to synthesize intelligence. So it doesn't imply copying human intelligence, but having a sort of intelligence in one way or another, maybe reaching a certain level of consciousness. So it's initially biased towards us humans, but later we discovered that we can achieve intelligence in many different forms. Current way of doing AI now, the last 5 to 10 years is mostly based on machine learning systems, neural networks, but that's not the only way of achieving AI. There are many different forms that has evolved for the past decades, and we are working on some of those things. We took inspiration from other ideas earlier on, and later we'll discover in which parts are we deviating from contemporary AI now.
Well, let's get into that a little bit. So first of all, I mentioned this, Valmiz is a multi-agent AI, and in fact, you coined the term augmentive AI. So before we talk about this multi-agent aspect of it, why did you create this unique term augmentive AI, and what does it mean?
Augmentive essentially means to support, to bolster. That is in strong contrast to supplantive, meaning to replace, to supersede. So the core essence of augmentive AI is as humans, it augments our existing systems and pipelines to support us and puts us humans in the center of critical decision making. So augmentive because it works in two ways. It augments humans, us, for our existing work to increase throughput, and it augments the two your existing pipeline, your existing processes. So it's both social and a technical term. So that's why we picked the term. So in strong contrast to supplantive AI that are designed, I don't know if that's how they initially that's what their goals are. These contemporary systems tend to replace humans now. We're seeing it in everywhere industry, in creative writing, in arts, music production, other thing, many things. So there are pluses and cons to that, and I will discuss later what are the pluses and what are the cons of each approach, and that's why we're here to provide an alternate way of achieving AI without having to exclusively piggyback on existing providers now of AI.
You raised some great points. We've been talking about this forever on our other show, The Full Crew. In fact, everybody out there, Rom was a guest on our Full Crew. I think we may have even talked about AI on that show. We can drop that link, and you guys can absolutely check that out. It was a really fun time. But that's what everybody's concerned about, right? With AI, they think, oh, it's going to take my
Mhm.
job, and we've seen even the screenwriters and the folks out in Hollywood having a big strike because look, they're trying to use images through AI, create people out of past films, and you're not going to pay me for this. And I think it's a really a different mindset to think of AI in terms of a tool and something that can augment and enhance your abilities versus something that will absolutely just replace you outright. And I love that you've rooted your thinking in the deep thinking that happened back in the 1950s in philosophy. By the way, Rom talked about a lot of this also on Clubhouse with Maggie last Thursday. If you missed that, check out that replay on demand. That was absolutely spectacular. But let's talk about those pluses and minuses, of supplantive AI, which is not what you're doing. And I think the minuses probably outweigh the pluses, but I'd love to hear your view on this.
Yeah, these systems mostly, if not all, do it via machine learning. So machine learning, as Elon Musk once pointed out on Twitter, underneath it is statistics. So
Right.
what's that famous phrase about statistics? Lies, more lies, and statistics.
Yes. You can definitely make statistics skew and speak whatever you want them to say.
Yes, so it's not a matter of truth or falseness. It's a matter of what favors the algorithm to a certain point.
Yeah.
And when you're using statistics to make computations, you are already allowing errors to come out and you accept those errors. There's a certain error rate that you have to accept. But in mission critical systems, you cannot afford that. In healthcare, in defense, you cannot have that.
Yeah.
So with supplantive AI, okay, fine. So we have this generative art, uh, uh, all kinds of generative applications of generative AI. Okay, so you can say, I want a cat that wears the hat of Abraham Lincoln while it is bicycling at the back of a blue whale. Well, that's cute. It's nice. One problem is that with those kinds of imagery, it doesn't reflect reality at all. So, and then that's also part of the problem why these AI systems hallucinate. Now, there's a comparison of these kinds of AI posted on LinkedIn not too long ago. They have cataloged and classified the error rates by a percentage of these systems, including the popular ones from OpenAI. Yeah, so some even go as high as almost 10%, at 9.98% rate of hallucination. Remember the discussion earlier about hallucination about the two lawyers that were fined 5,000 US dollars because they used ChatGPT to generate uh, documents for the court, and then the court discovered that they used AI to create those reports with false citations.
Yeah, it's really fun when your AI makes up case law and you're filing that for a legal proceeding. I mean, talk about scary. Holy shnikes. Let's talk about your AI. So, I believe we have an image. I want to walk through Valmiz and this idea of multi-agent. Now, you created a number of names: Veda, Vela, Vega, Vera, uh, Vix. That's new from I think the last time we talked. So talk us through what we're seeing here.
Yeah. So most of the AI systems on the supplantive side are black boxes. So when you run them, while the software is running, you cannot inspect the running state of the system. So the reason why we made it multi-agent is that while Valmiz is running, you can pick and inspect the parts that you want to modify and update. So they can work as separate agents on their own individually. You want Vega and Vega only for your use case, for your factory, fine. Or you can combine them together to form the whole of Valmis, just like the classic robots in the 1980s, 70s, where they fused together to form a bigger robot, something along those lines, and it's part of the inspiration too. So, um, so with multi-agents, so you can create many different um, copies of Valmis, each containing a certain instance of Veda, for example, which will be deployed, achieving a certain level of redundancy while the system is transparent. So why is it important that systems are transparent? And I'm not talking on the policy side of things. I'm not talking about rules and regulations and governance. I'm talking about the actual software that's running. So with neural networks and machine learning, once the system and once the data input comes in through one side, um, while it is happening on the inside, you cannot do anything about it. Um, that's problematic if you as an engineer, as an analyst, as a scientist, you want to inspect exactly what happens in that exact time frame in order to observe it. So you want to apply, say for example, scientific theory for it. So observability, cause and effect. So you want to be able to make such modifications, tweaks while the system is running, and that's a byproduct of the multi-agent design that we have now.
Now, each one of these does kind of a different function. I remember
Yeah.
because you and I talked about this before. I wrote an article we'll drop here momentarily. But there's one agent, I'll call it, that kind of keeps the AI running. Uh,
Hmm.
so in other words, you never have to kind of shut it down and reboot. Which agent is that, and why is that important?
Okay, so that's part of it's under Vega
Okay.
actually.
Hmm.
So Vega is the one that's responsible for making sure that data is consistent. So if you're running Valmiz in a factory, for example, and you have a complete power shutdown, the moment your power restores back, it doesn't have to go through the complete boot cycle of the system in order to restore your information. Restoring information will happen instantaneously, so that you'll have minimal downtime. But in a more realistic scenario, the values will be deployed in such cases through multiple levels of redundancy. So in the event that, say, you have two instances of values in your factory, one was affected by power shutdown, the other one runs on generator. It will take over the other Valmis instance in a matter of microseconds. So for the clients inside, for the users inside your factory, they will not notice any kind of interruption.
All right. Now there is a storage functionality because the focus you have, at least for most companies, right, is to use their own data, right? I think a big part with big issue with generative AI is they're out there grabbing things wildly off the internet, some of which, as you
Mm,
said, lies, lies,
mm,
lies, repeating lies.
mm,
And then kind of once you get that in the system, really hard to extract that out.
mm.
But if you're using a closed system AI, your Valmiz would be ideal. Explain kind of that storage aspect and the importance of the fact that Valmiz focuses on a company's own data.
Yeah. So that's an interesting point. I also mentioned that in the recently concluded AI Asia Expo here in the Philippines this last week. So um, with contemporary systems now, they focus on the data aspects. Everything is data. So you've seen here jobs that are called data specialists, data scientists, even if they're not close to being actual scientists. Sorry to say, uh, um, they focus on data. It's about handling and wrangling the data. The focus with Valmis is not the data. We're on the other side again of those things. We're focusing on the system, on the intelligence, on the algorithms. So then your data is yours. By default, we'd like that you house your data in your own facility, in your own um, servers, so that we are free from it. So you run Valmis inside your own premises, inside your own system, and you won't care about your data. However, if you want us to house your data, then we can have an agreement that will house your data. There's certain terms and agreements that we'll have to safeguard your data. So again, going back to the point of data versus algorithm, so data versus program. by focusing on the program and by generalizing the kind of input that we take in, we are able to work through multiple different kinds of industries. So whether you are in healthcare or whether you are in farming, there's a certain kind of, it's a common form of data that we can ingest from that, and we work with that. So you turn your raw data into your own knowledge base. So Valmiz then is like uh, your tablespoon or your blender that will mix, that will concoct your own Slurpee for you,
Well,
your own smoothie for you. So
you're
so you
smoothly
buy
on the information. Yeah.
yeah, you buy yeah. I said Slurpee. That's something from the convenience store. I meant to say smoothie. So so you buy the blender from us. Your fruits are yours. We don't care about your fruits. It's yours. However you want to grow them. But then you use Valmis as the thing that blends this the ingredients to produce what you want. So it's yours. So
That
that's
is
our distinguishing characteristic from other providers. And
well,
other providers, I meant to say other providers, sorry to interrupt you. There are very few that are actually unique in this AI arena now, because most other companies now actually just plug in to the bigger players through API calls and then brand themselves as something new out in the market. So it's confusing. So if you go out there in the web now, do a search, all these different, you see all these different companies that seem to provide, sorry, different services, but actually they're all one and the same.
oh, wow. Well, I think Kay Cruz, who's, by the way, a super fan out there, he's recognizing what you're doing. He said, brilliant work. You're the only person I've seen to flush out the hallucinations. And, I mean, that is significant. Let's talk about some of these applications specifically. I want to talk about commercial drones. I want to talk about the military side. I want to talk about air taxis and advanced air mobility, because there are so many different, I mean, there's 52 possible, probably even more use cases. You mentioned healthcare. We didn't talk about election security. A lot of elections are coming up here next year. I don't want to think about that. Just so many different applications. But for this crowd here, I want to talk about drones first.
Mm.
So tell me how a drone company, whether it's a manufacturer, whether it's an enterprise, critical infrastructure group that has drones as part of their inspection program. How do you see Valmiz as augmenting what they're doing today?
Oh, I discussed this subtopic in the expo, the AI Asia Expo. So with most drones, I don't know, maybe most or are all drones. So whether military or civilian drones. So when they fly, they operate they use the operating system on the device. They have parameters. But then when you need to update the code, add or remove functionality from the drone, I'm not talking about remote controlling. I'm not talking about steering it. I'm not talking about gathering data, but the functionality inside the drone or a fleet. So you have to recall them back, right? You have to recall them back. You have to connect it somehow to the machine and then update functionality, add or remove, modify. That's um, that's the way it is now, and nobody has really come up with a solution to address that. However, with Valmis, you can update the drone mid-flight. So you can add or remove instructions to it, update the software, update the parameters without even interrupting the flight of the drone. Sub-microsecond, maybe a nanosecond update. So the updates are also atomic, meaning to say either the updates happened or didn't. So it's either a yes or no. So for drones, So let's think of, say, first responders or defense. So you send a fleet, probe, scout, and then you need to make changes to the float, I mean to the drone, to the fleet. You can do that from the headquarters to simple press of buttons, and then the code for the fleet has been updated without them having to go back to the headquarters, without them having to risk battery life, without them having to maybe blow up the cover. So you can send a fleet of drones one way and manipulate and update them as they're flying to the target. For reconnaissance, for example, for first responders, somebody somebody got in an accident in while hiking in a tall mountain. So those are some of the use cases of this, and the technology that we have with Valmiz is truly unique. We are using essentially the same kind of technology that NASA used before with it's called the remote agent on Deep Space One. It was a flyby mission of an asteroid and comet 100 million miles away from Earth. So they made careful surgical um, instruction modifications on the aircraft without it having to fly out of orbit, I mean out of trajectory. So they were able to successfully do that. We use a similar kind, if not the same kind of technology, and we just discovered along the way that hey, we actually have this kind of technology too.
Wow. So you just opened a whole nother market that I wasn't even thinking of, Rom, which is space and low Earth orbit satellites or whatever. I mean, all this is applicable to all of it. I want to get back to drones though, because you mentioned the term fleet, and when we think oftentimes, at least right now, given the regulations of something like a search and rescue that you mentioned,
Mm-mm.
that's generally going to be one pilot, one drone. But we all know that the future, regardless of whether it's military or commercial, is going to be essentially swarms. Now, that term can have a negative connotation. It sounds like, right, swarm. It's like, oh, that's evil or nasty, or what is that? No, like you could use a swarm of drones in precision agriculture, each one with a different sensor on board, to gather all different kinds of data to assimilate at one time in one area, which I think is something that we're just not really doing right now. But with Valmiz, that's something that, if I'm hearing you correctly, that as that swarm is out there over a field, hypothetically,
Mm.
say something comes up, say out of nowhere, a crop duster decides to fly within that particular area, and
Mm.
now you need to move quickly, and you need the entire group of drones to get out of the way.
Mm.
This is something you could do, no pun intended, on the fly.
Yes.
Wow. Okay. So I could see a million applications for this, including, of course, on the defense side, anything, and I think most things in life are pretty dynamic, right? Like I think that's when we think about autonomy, right? When we think about the future, it's going to be this one to many. It's going to be even on the air taxi side, and I use that term, loosely. That's kind of the layman's term, pilotless aircraft carrying humans, to be
Mm.
able to make updates literally on the fly, I think
Mm.
is unbelievable. Now, the interesting thing about what you told us earlier, Rom, is your origin story with ASTN Group was really about logistics for aircraft. And you and I and Robert worked on an article together about air taxis and the demand capacity balancing, or DCB, that will have to take place, and how Valmiz can play a role in that. Do you want to talk about that a little bit? This idea of logistics are so key for whether it's a vertiport, an airport, and who gets to go when and where things are moving, and how Valmiz can play a role in that?
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why hallucinating AI systems won't work in those scenarios. So you cannot afford to have that certain AI system decided not to ship something, not to mark something because hey, in my records I wasn't doing this, so I might as well discard this for this hour,
Yes.
and then you lost 10 million US dollars. So by working with your data with Valmiz, so only your data will become the authoritative source and resource for what's true in your logistics. So essentially, the problem is already solved because we are just putting a level of autonomy to these things. This is tracking, monitoring, search, um, inventory. This is like sitting on a desk on steroids. But then if you put a layer of autonomy and automation to it, it becomes significantly easier. So, for example, with um, UAVs and these air taxis, it will have. Imagine these air taxis being able to communicate with each other, but the program inside is not fixed. So, by having a system that's not fixed, the operators of the taxi can make updates to it real time, without the air taxi having being forced to land. So again, it has to be precise, it has to be accurate, it has to be error free, it has to be fault tolerant. With Valmis, if it encounters a grave, an operation that's not supposed to happen, say for example, a lightning strike in some of the drives in the aircraft storage mechanism was fried due to a nearby lightning strike through intense power surge.
Okay.
The Valve will not the software, as long as the software is running there. Um, Two cases: the software died, so it will then put the control back to the human, or the software is alive. It will not crash. It will put the operator or the engineer or the analyst into a certain last minute important repair mode, so it will not crash. So the program will refuse to die. So you then the mechanic, say 100 miles away, can perform repairs on it while the air taxi still in flight.
So we had talked about this idea of, uh, kind of giving it remote instructions like land, move, pivot, change your entire route. But now you're talking about remote maintenance updates as well. So, because these are digital platforms, really anything you would need to do on the edge, Valmiz can facilitate that, regardless of whether it's a ground robot, a flying drone,
Mm, mm,
an air
mm,
taxi,
mm. Yeah.
any of it. Wow. Okay.
So it doesn't matter if it's in flight or it's on the ground or it's underwater, as long as you have a way to connect to that machine, to that device. So via satellite, or say via 5G, as long as you have a way to connect to that device, then you're able to go inside the machine itself, inside the brain, and then do surgical manipulations.
Wow. I'm not an engineer. I've got a son that's training to be one, but when I listen to you and I think of systems, I think systems engineerings, and I think systems, this is a system of systems. And
Mm,
getting back to that air taxi example, DCB, or demand capacity balancing, is all about air traffic flow.
mm,
And, that is going to be highly relevant to not only air taxis, like on the ground, in the air, possibly flying through corridors, but also drones and UAS traffic management. And so I know there's a lot of companies out there listening. And so think through kind of where this fits, because, and if you have any questions, and there goes my, by the way, Rom, I have an AI camera, and you can see it's following me. And sometimes because I'm Italian and I wave my hands around, it goes to weird places. So AI is awesome, like I don't know what kind of AI that is, but it's a lot of fun, and sometimes it follows my mug and stares at my desk. But we're all good now. Anyway, I think it's machine learning version of it. So, and once again, the difference between what you're doing and my wonderful camera is that if I was in the middle of a military operation, I could not afford to have that happen. Right? I couldn't. I mean,
Absolutely.
so I mean, I think this is a great, this was an impromptu demo of what we don't want and how yours is very different. So, we've got a couple minutes left, Rom, and I want to make sure before we depart today that people really appreciate this human-centric model you've created. Um, because we kind of started this conversation with generative AI and kind of how it supplants the human, but how rather you've really put that human at the helm and kept them there to use this as a tool to augment whatever it is they're doing. Let's kind of talk a little bit more about that and how it works as a practical matter. In other words, I'm the human. I'm using Valmiz. What do I have to do to do that remote maintenance change on my drone, or to tell my air taxi like land to the nearest vertiport because I see that your engine it's not recoverable and we need to get you safe. How am I interfacing with this? Because I think from a customer standpoint, that's like the hugest thing, right? What's that user interface, and how does that work?
The keyword there is bespoke. So we can roll out bespoke versions of Valmiz for different kinds of interfaces, and it's easier for us in the company to write custom UIs, custom user interfaces for clients. So for a specific use case for farming, they're familiar with a certain UI. Very few buttons, very few but large buttons, big screen, something like that. You don't need a lot of this functionality. You just want to be able to talk to the tractors. Fine. You want to talk to your air taxis? Tell us your specs, and then we can roll it out for a specific interface. Um,
And
Going back to
if I can
your
interrupt for 1 second, if I'm working at an airport and I want to integrate, and I'm looking at my article that we had dropped earlier about DCB, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If I want to integrate the 7 different systems that already exist with the FAA, in addition to whatever new stuff, I can use this.
yes, absolutely, it's going to be easy. So going back to your mention earlier about having a human-centric system,
Yep.
one of the reasons why we decided to have that is, again, Valmis is a product of more than 20 years of research.
Yeah,
So
let's
one
foot
of the
stomp that. This was not something you just hatched, this some plan you hatched over. I mean, because in the beginning you're like, Robert came to you, you were doing this other thing, and he's just like, hey, and you're like within minutes like, yes. But this is like 20 years of work when you had this
yeah,
epiphany. Yeah.
yeah. So most of the engineers um, rely on principles of mathematics and science to
Yeah.
build their systems.
Yep.
Ours is that's secondary. Our primary base on which we build things on is philosophy. So
By the way, having been a philosophy major in college, in addition to history, I love where you're going with this because I know this is about moral reasoning and putting humans
yes,
first. I don't want
mm,
to cut you off because we only have a couple minutes left, but we have an amazing question from the audience. I really think you are going to want to hear it. You're going to want to answer it. This question from a LinkedIn user says, How about ingesting terabytes of video and photos, intelligently tagging the parts and pieces, and enabling selective retrieval to find all relevant material for finding construction defects, targeting or creating video stories? Answer?
Is it my turn to speak?
Yes, please.
Yes, of course. That's already a solved problem. Because the data's already there. It's all a matter of um we have something called inside the term that we use internally is contextualization. So contextualization is a matter of what are things that are alike and not alike. It's like sorting out your desk. It's like sorting out your desk. You have terabytes of information there on your desk. Or which of these are my phones? Which are my earphones, my hard drives? So each of them have unique properties that link them to other things, which are then in turn linked to other things again. But they are not based on something that as a matter of stirring the cup, it's already there. There are already intrinsic properties for every object there on your desk. So so ingesting this terabytes of data and cataloging them, organizing them, indexing them is already a solved problem. I don't know why other groups have so much difficulties with that, whereas this problem has already been solved many years ago. But then for us, we have to also not only solve the storage problem because the storage devices before were slow. So so we have here a faster media now that can handle big loads of reads and writes to the drives. So yes, it's already a solved problem. Um, Part of the answer to that is already described in the Valmiz white paper.
Oh, great point. And that's on your website, right, Rom?
Yes, that's on valmiz.com. It's right there somewhere in the middle. Then you can click there to get the white paper that was written many years ago.
Yeah. So this question really kind of focused on inspections, and I could see where drones and the 3D models and all of that goes along with it, the post collection analysis.
Mm.
It's something that Valmiz is really perfect for, and it also learns from itself. Is that right? In other words, when you're talking about this internal data, human centric, you know, AI, as you keep inspecting that same pipe or that same building over and over and over
Yeah.
again, Valmiz can detect those changes over time. Isn't that one of your
Yes.
agents does that specifically?
Yeah. Yes. That's a good point to bring. So it tracks changes across time linearly, and you're able to go back and roll back and jump to an earlier computation without messing up things. It's called in programming unwinding the stack. So you don't lose state, you don't lose data, you don't lose computed information. You're able to go back in time and inspect. So when you're using Valmis, there's a way to see what was the value of this thing. So it's marked, it's tagged as a hollow block. But is it actually a hollow block from, let's say, 3 years ago from the data that I have? So then you'll be able to inspect the actual construction materials that was used for this, because you have the data that can go back to it. And then again, from that earlier material, it was a red brick, and it's going to find networks connections from the entire data set again.
Wow. All right. So I knew time would fly, Rom. I just didn't know how fast, and we're already at time. We didn't really get to talk about your AI Asia Expo. And Mike, if you could pop up that image real quick. What I want to plug for everybody is follow Rom, get on the Valmiz/ASTN Group website. They're going to be pushing out a number of videos here in the next couple of weeks of Rom's involvement in this expo, the panels he was on, and I commend those to your attention. Comb through their website, check that out, because I think he really rocked people's worlds there. when he had a lot of generative AI people on a panel and then him. And I think you'll see that contrast and it'll be really exciting to watch. I know I'm going to watch it. So we are at time, Rom, and we'll go ahead and take that image down. And I want to make sure that everybody knows how to find you, how to reach you. I'm sure they have questions and want to engage very specifically about what it is that Valmiz can do in their particular market sector or with their products and services.
Yeah, they can reach me via LinkedIn or via my email. My email address is rommel.martinez@astn-group.com.
Okay, awesome. And everybody, we are at time, in fact, a little bit over, but I want to, besides these videos that Ram is talking about, I want to just kind of throw out there. Hopefully we'll see Ram a little bit more across some of our other platforms next year, maybe even at Law Tech Connect at AVSI. We're doing an AI panel, so stay tuned for more. But thank you so much, Ram. This was amazing. I learned even more today than I have just in the past couple times that we've worked together. And hopefully everybody out there has too. So thank you again. And everybody, we are out here.